Happy New Year, guys. 2024 has been a really crazy year with some good and a lot of not so good. So while we repress and try to prepare for the oncoming year, I thought it would be fun to start an annual tradition, my top 10 games of the year list. A couple ground rules before we get into things. First rule. I have to have played at least 75% of the game. I have a few honorable mentions that we'll get to before the top 10 that most likely would have made it on the list if I'd completed them before making this video. But, didn't play 75%, so here we are. Second rule. Most of the games I played throughout the year do not come from 2024. I'm pretty sure most people are like that actually. Not everyone can afford to buy every game that comes out every year. And also there's like 50 years of gaming to appreciate that a lot of people just don't talk about. Like I played over 50 games this year to full completion and less than 5 of them were from 2024. So we're gonna have some games on the list that are not from 2024. Sorry gamers, that's just how it is. Third, even though I play games from other years that are not 2024, I will make it a rule that the game of the year has to have come out that year. For example, last year my number 1 game probably would have been Persona 4 Golden. But with this third rule, it would have been Pikmin 4. I'm open to this rule being a little bit flexible if there's really nothing good that comes out during the year, but I haven't had something like that happen to me yet. Fingers crossed, we'll see. Anyways, enough yapping, let's get to it. I have been waiting for this game for like 4 years at this point. And when I found out that it was actually going to come out this year, I went apeshit. We rarely ever get to see games like actually set in China, especially AAA games, let alone ones focused on turning to the West. And this game came out during a time when I was really busy. I want to give it my full attention when I'm not as caught up doing other things, so for now, no Black Myth Wukong. 2024 was definitely a good year for RPG fans. Atlas especially was cooking this year. Back to back to back to back. There were 4 games that caught my eye that they published this year. Unfortunately, I was pretty full off of most of the other games that I played, meaning I had no appetite for these ones. And also my first playthrough of Persona 4 took me 2 years of playing off and on. I would have loved to have finished all these games this year, but it just was not in the cards. I actually have been playing the Dragon Quest III remake because the original is definitely among my top 10 games of all time, but I've been having very mixed feelings about it so far, and I really want to finish all of it and let my thoughts cook a little bit more. Anyways, enough of this side shit, time to get to number 10. Orbo's Odyssey is kinda like Mario Odyssey if Mario Odyssey was fucking crazy. For me, this is one of those games that just came out of nowhere this year. The game randomly popped up on my Steam feed, and when I see a game that's under $10 and also has overwhelmingly positive ratings, something primal comes over me. Anyways, yeah, Orbo's Odyssey is surprisingly good. The main gameplay loop focuses on going through these open zone levels and collecting cogs, like collecting moons in Mario Odyssey. And oh my god, this shit blows by so fast. The game only has 4 levels, so you can beat it in literally less than an hour in some cases. The core of the game is the movement engine. Your main mechanic is this rocket air dash that sends you flying way into whatever direction you're looking, and you can cancel that air dash into a ground pound. If you keep cycling those two together, you just fucking... Sometimes I really need a good, short game to cut through the fat of other longer games, so I was very happy to have discovered Orbo this year. There's only one game this year that grabbed a hold of me so hard that I played it for 30 plus hours in the span of 2 days, and that game was Balatro. I'm sure by this point most people have heard of this game, but to anyone who's not terminally online, Balatro is a one-handed poker deck building roguelike. Each time you play, you start off with a base deck, and each round you have the chance to add or subtract things from your deck to get higher scores for the exponentially growing antes. The strongest thing you can add to your build are unique Joker cards that have special effects like buffing your chip count or 100xing your multiplier for a specific card combo. It's very easy to lose yourself in this game and just hit play again over and over. Every game you feel like you're pushing yourself further and you understand the scope of the game just a little bit more. And when you feel like your build is strong, sometimes you can still get crushed by bad luck. It is easily the most addicting game to come out this year, and it 100% deserved its Game of the Year nomination. Spider-Man 2 had to be another one of my most anticipated games for this year. If you watched any of my other videos, you already know that I'm deeply Spider-Man pilled, and the first entry in Insomniac's Spider-Man series was probably one of my favorite games in the past few years. So, did Spider-Man 2 live up to the hype? Is it even better than the first game? Honestly, no. It's kind of difficult for me to give my thoughts on this game without a lot of context from the other two games, but if you want my honest take, I think Spider-Man 2 as well as Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales are best played as a marathon experience. Going into any of the games after the first one and expecting something different, I would say that you are most likely going to be at least a little disappointed. However, if you're like me, and you like Spider-Man enough to not give a fuck, then you and me, we're eating, my friend. Don't you love it when games are virtually seamless? From front to back, Shadow of the Colossus is one of the most cinematic gaming experiences you can have. Literally pull any snapshot from this game and you could easily mistake it for an animated film. I really love a game like this where you can just pick up and play every session, except for the first session where you have to sit there and watch the 10-hour long opening cutscene. The Eco team really just knows how to pull you in with rich, evocative imagery, and it's only enhanced by Bluepoint's very strong experience with visual overhauls. Before this year, I've picked up Shadow of the Colossus multiple times, and I've never really ended up finishing it, but now I can say that if you have a free weekend and you have $20 to spare, this is an essential gaming experience, especially if you like grand cinematic experiences like Elden Ring, or if you like very dynamic puzzle games. At the very beginning of this year, a specific game was coming out that I took some major interest in. One that people have been waiting for almost a whole 10 years now, the almighty Tekken 8. In preparation for the release of Tekken 8, I decided it was time to really sink my teeth into the series. The games I ended up playing were Tekken 1, Tekken 2, Tekken 3, and just a little bit of Tekken 4. I won't go too deep into my thoughts on the other games because we're going to do a whole video about all the Tekken games sometime down the line. But among all the games that I played, the biggest standout was Tekken 3. Right out of the gate, you get that aura emanating off of Tekken 3, that either I'm about to whoop some ass, or get my ass whooped. And damn, it is fun either way. Tekken 3 was still early enough in the series that the characters had a lot of moves, but like, not as many as they have now. So in that way, the game is very simple, and it feels like you can really get a good control of your character very quickly. As of right now, I think Tekken 3 is the game I would suggest for most people to play if they want to get into the series, mostly because it just clicks so fast, and the game is just very easy to approach. In fact, it's so good that I forgot to play Tekken 8 for the rest of the year, and that's why Tekken 3 is in this video instead of Tekken 8. Much like Orbo's Odyssey, Pseudo Regalia was a game that wasn't even on my radar this year. I found it when I was looking for new age retro games with retro video game aesthetics and concepts, but modern gameplay sensibilities. And even more than Orbo's Odyssey, Pseudo Regalia absolutely delivered. The very obvious inspiration for Pseudo Regalia are games like Castlevania and Metroid, where you're continuously retreading the world and uncovering secrets that were right under your nose the whole time. And sure, Pseudo Regalia approaches the Metroidvania concept well, but what really hooked me was the straight up beautiful movement engine. In most Metroidvanias, you make progress by getting a spell that lets you get past a certain enemy, or a power up that lets you get over a certain obstacle. Pseudo Regalia, being a 3D Metroidvania, lays out progress with movement-based power-ups that enhance your ability to traverse the world. Things like slides, slide jumps, wall kicks, wall slides, ground pound boosted high jumps. At one point, you gain the ability to get an extra jump when you hit something with your sword in midair, so you can ascend up impossible gaps by slashing at enemies while kicking off walls. The shit is so fucking cool. It's not even something I can really explain in words, it just feels so sick, and I hope the developer makes even more games because I desperately need more stuff like this. Traditionally, I'm not a big fan of horror. I don't like the feeling of being scared, you know? Other normal shit in my life gives me enough anxiety already. I watched my friend play through Outlast 1 and Slender: The Arrival this year, and I think I realized that I don't like a lot of horror games because of the two main gameplay loops there are. One, the boring bullshit like walking down an empty hallway with nothing in it.
Bro, what am I looking for?
And two, the anxiety bullshit, like walking down a hallway with a monster chasing you.
I don't know how to use the first thing. Where the fuck are my guns? Oh my god!
Resident Evil 2 looks at this approach and says, hey guys, what if we skip this part and just replaced it with actual fun gameplay? And this may be a hot take, but I actually like this approach. For the majority of Resident Evil 2, you're slowly uncovering this maze of a police precinct, all while taking down zombies and solving puzzles. And the cool part about all of this is that there's real immediacy to all of your actions. There's a finite amount of bullets in the game, so each time you use your guns, you really question yourself. Do I need to unload my whole mag into the zombie to get past it? Or can I just juke him and run around? And when you actually do end up killing a zombie, it's dead for a while, but if you leave and come back after too long, you might find that the entire room has come back to life. In a lot of cases, I would find things like this in a game very tedious, but the way Resident Evil 2 does it, man, I don't know, I just love it. I also love that the puzzles in the game are legit mentally stimulating. There's one puzzle early on where you have to figure out the code to this lock by combining the initials of all the workers in that same office. It's not a required puzzle, but the game does really reward you for investing time and energy into the engagement of the world. You also can't talk about Resident Evil 2 without talking about the indomitable Mr. X. Somewhere around halfway through Act 1 of the game, this giant mystery man appears out of nowhere. No dialogue, no screen prompts, nothing. He just appears out of nowhere and starts following you. And I love shit like this. You don't need a tutorial or an on-screen pop-up to tell you that you don't want this guy to give you a hug. I would say that Resident Evil 2 falls in line with all the other classic bullshit lines that IGN says. It's an instant classic, it's a masterpiece, and there's too much water. 7 out of 10.
Damn it.
After making possibly the greatest feat of the video game medium 2 years ago, From Software looked around their meeting table and said, well, what now? The difficulty with being a continuation from Elden Ring is that you're trying to pick up from fucking Elden Ring. 2 weeks after release, Elden Ring sold 12 million copies, and it had 952,000 players at peak on Steam. As of the recording of this video, there's still 40,000 active players playing a single-player game that came out 2 years ago. That just straight up does not happen to other games. Previous Soulsborne DLC added new areas and bosses, so that much is par for the course, but like, the scope and grandeur of Elden Ring alone demands that the subsequent DLC be like the same level or more, and the result is Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, a DLC that is basically its own game, and also a game that is very much just more Elden Ring, which is both the best thing that you could possibly ask for and the worst thing that you could possibly ask for. The first issue you face is the idea that people have to continue into this new game with their 200-hour maxed out character. FromSoft decided that the best way to approach this was to make previous stats not really matter in Shadow of the Erdtree. Now all the damage that you do and take come from these little collectibles that you get throughout the DLC. Okay, first problem solved, right? The next problem, and arguably I'd say Shadow of the Erdtree's biggest problem, is difficulty and scale. Elden Ring already had some of the craziest, most insane boss fights in all of Soulsborne history, and now this DLC somehow has to come out and best those moments. I akin this issue to something a lot of people refer to in the anime and manga world as power creep. With any long-running series, over time you have to level things up little by little. The increase might be slight at first, but continual slight changes build time and time again to become huge if you compare it from beginning to end. To illustrate this point, here's a boss from Dark Souls 1. Okay, now here's a normal enemy from Shadow of the Erdtree. Do you see the point I'm making? These are not bad things necessarily, but we get to a point where things start getting fucking insane. All of this to say that bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree, especially on release, were the most off-the-wall, ball-busting bosses I've ever played against in a video game. And even though I hated some of it, damn, I just could not get enough of this game. Just back to back to back to back to back to back, there were so many boss fights that were both a spectacle and a legit mechanical challenge. And easily the cherry on top for me was Mesmer. This guy has become one of my favorite Soulsborne bosses, right up there next to the GOATs. His fight just feels like a dance or like a boxing match, and I just love that shit so much. Damn, I have rewritten this section like 5 times now. EarthBound is a game that evokes so many emotions in you: happiness, sadness, confusion, rage. It conveys so strongly the awkward and quirky evolution from a sheltered childhood to uncharted adolescence. That period in all of our lives where we have no idea what we're doing, but we know how we're feeling and who we want to hang out with. When naming your character and party members at the beginning, the game poses itself to be a fun and silly adventure. But then it opens up and you slowly begin to realize that things are more than what they seem. The vibe is solemn and a little bit ominous. The music paints an uncertain air about the game that never fully seems to dissipate. And then fast forward a few hours and you're fighting a pile of shit. EarthBound is in this constant dance of being very introspective and mysterious, and then being the most unserious game to have ever been created. It feels like every opportunity possible the developers are building up to the next punchline, and it's honestly surprising that a game this old has humor that still continues to be effective to this day. It's no wonder that some of the most popular games of today are directly inspired by this game. If you have any interest in games like Undertale and Amori, or if you think you'd be interested in a game like EarthBound, I guarantee you it is 100% up your alley, and you should be playing it like yesterday. As the years continue to go on, it feels more and more like the big companies do not give a fuck about making their player bases happy. Sony put out arguably the biggest commercial flop of all time in Concord this year. It's a live service hero shooter game that a lot of PlayStation fans vocalized they had zero interest in. And this comes at a time where there are increasing tensions between game consumers, game developers, and game publishers. Publishers want to make as much money as possible, but that seems to be at the behest of quality and the health of the industry. Developers want more time to put into actually making the games that we all want to play, all while experiencing mass layoffs throughout the industry and an increasing crunch time culture. And consumers just want to play games that are actually good, ones that deliver on promises made in marketing campaigns, and ones that are reasonably priced for the relative experience that they offer. That is why it is a genuine miracle that this year, and in this industry climate, a game like Astro Bot was able to release. Every moment of Astro Bot is just brimming with compassion and love for itself in all of video games. No matter what you're doing or where you're going in the game, there always seems to be a little technical or style flourish from the game developers, straight to the players saying, "Yeah, we see you." It is so genuinely refreshing to play a game that is built and published by a highly funded group of people that actually give a shit about what they're making. And that's without even going over the gameplay and level design. The levels are built in such a way that every action and reaction is satisfying. Each power-up that you get really feels well explored, and nothing in the game overstays its welcome. The developers deserve their win at the Game Awards this year, and they're getting my #1 spot as well.
When I thought about, why this game, give people joy and smiles on their faces, I think it came down to the people every day making the game and doing exactly that. I think, when I think of the team, it's the amount of generosity they gave They put the user first always, never thought about any calculation. It was just about the kids, especially, because we had this huge privilege to be potentially the first game to be in the hands of children, and we know what it means very much. So Team Asobi, really, from the bottom of our heart, well done and thank you so much.
Well, boys, girls, and in-betweens, that was 2024. A lot of games this year, but it was also really quiet in a weird way. I hope you all were able to play through some good games, and I want you to let me know down in the comments what your #1 game was that you played in 2024. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please go check out some of my other ones. And in all seriousness, I know things are crazy out there in the world right now. There's a lot of trouble and a lot of strife, and many people have no access to stuff like games, let alone food, water, and shelter. It's important that as things develop in these difficult times, that we band together and stay strong. I hope all of you have a safe and healthy 2025, and I will see you in the next video.